Hi, I'm Esther from Skylark First Aid, and this is a short video showing you how to use a defibrillator or a Defib or an AED, which stands for Automated External Defibrillator, which is a bit of a mouthful, so I think we'll stick to Defib for now, if that's okay. So ideally, when you use a Defib, somebody continues CPR. So somebody's doing, if you can imagine, 30 compressions and 2 rescue breaths if they're willing to do the breaths. That needs to continue while I go and run and get my nearest Defib. The best way to know where they are is you'll be phoning 999 anyway for this person, obviously. They should tell you if there is a Defib around you, because obviously you give your location to them, and they will tell you if there is a Defib. You might know that there's one locally, but consider that it needs to be within about 200 metres radius wise of where the casualty is, because the quicker you can get a Defib on, the more chance you've got of it working. So over those sort of minutes as they tick on, the chances of it working will become less and less and less. So the further you've got to go to get the Defib, the less point there is. I mean, if you've got to consider getting in the car, then it's definitely too far for you. But it needs to be sort of runnable. And remember, you've got to run there and run back again with it. So somebody can be doing CPR while the defibrillator's on its way. And we use a Defib when somebody's in cardiac arrest, so their heart isn't pumping blood around their body properly and they're not breathing. So let's have a look at the Defib. Here's one. This is a training Defib. It is slightly smaller than a real one, and it's generic because there are lots of different brands of defibrillator. They all do exactly the same thing and they work in the same way. They just might look a little bit different colour wise and where the buttons are positioned. So this is a generic training Defib that will cover most different defibrillators. So when you get the kit, first thing that you're looking for is a preparation kit, and it will look like this, or it could be in a foil packet and it will say preparation kit on it. So open this up, and there's a few things to help get the casualty ready for the Defib. So there's a face shield for CPR. If you didn't have one, you could now give the rescue breaths because you've got a face shield to do that. There'll be a pair of gloves in there if you want to put those on, that's absolutely fine. There should be a big pair of first aid scissors in there with a blunt edge, and we use those to cut through all the layers of their clothing, cut through a woman's bra as well, and push all the clothing out to the side because you need a completely bare chest and stomach. Nobody will care, trust me, don't worry about exposing somebody's chest. It doesn't matter. You need to use this Defib, otherwise they're going to die. So let's just cut through the clothing and push it all out to the side. You'll also have in here some kind of towel, a cloth, paper towels might be fine, anything you can lay your hands on, to be honest. Because if their body is a bit wet or damp, you need to dry it off. So the Defib pads, which I'll show you in a minute, don't stick very well to wet or damp skin. So if it's body sweat, or if they're outside and it's raining on them, just try and dry the areas where the pads are going to go. Dry it off as much as you can with anything you've got available. And the last thing in this little preparation kit is a disposable razor. So if it's a man with quite thick chest hair, you've got to shave it away, because again, the pad needs to stick directly to the skin. It won't work if it's hovering an inch above the skin on chest hair. So one of the pads is going to go here on the right of the chest, so just shave that off and brush away the hair. Just do it as quickly as you can. So those things shouldn't take very long. Cutting the clothing, pushing the clothing out to the side, dry them if you need to, and shave if you need to, as quickly as possible. Then we can get the actual Defib out. So as I said, this is a training one. It's a bit smaller than a real one, but you can clearly see the on button and the shock button. Now just a word about this. Most defibrillators are semi-automatic, so you have to press the shock button when the Defib tells you to. However, some of them are fully automatic, so they don't have a shock button. the defib will tell you that it's about to give the shock, and then it will just do it. But the ones I've always come across are semi-automatic, so there is a shock button for me to press. But don't panic if you open the bag and you can't see the shock button. It'll just be an automatic one that will do it anyway, regardless. What we're now looking for is a set of pads that will be in a foil packet. They're single use, so once you've used them on a casualty, they're thrown away. And you can see the wire coming out with a plug on the bottom. Now this should be ready, plugged into the machine. If it isn't, plug it in. The machine will be saying to you, plug in the pads because it will know. Then rip them open and take them out, and you'll see the long wire and two pads with a picture on each showing you where to stick them. It's very straightforward. So choose a pad, peel the back off, and I might need to tell my partner who's doing CPR to just stop for a second while I put the pad in place. And then they can carry it back on. Stop CPR again, look at the picture and stick the pad into place. Carry on with CPR again. So I interrupt the CPR. Don't wait for them to get to the end of 30 compressions. You interrupt them because the defib is the most important thing. It takes priority. However, try and keep the CPR going as much as you can. So that's where the pads go. And this is the same on every defibrillator. They'll be the same positioning. One up here on the top right of the chest and one down on their side, sort of under the chest and under their rib cage. So that's where the positioning always is on every defibrillator. So when you press the button in a bit, what happens is the shock goes across the heart. It creates a circuit of electricity. That's how it works. Just pop that back down. Now, once the pads are in place, the defibrillator will automatically start to analyse what's going on in this person's heart. So it's analysing their heart rhythm. And it will then decide, depending on what it finds, whether they will benefit from a shock or not. So if it thinks they will benefit from a shock, it will tell you to stop CPR and it will tell you to press this button. So it's not me who decides if they need a shock or not, it's the machine. I just do as I'm told. So when it says press the button, I press the button and it will give them a shock. It might say no shock advised, continue CPR. And that's because their heart is not in a shockable rhythm. It's got to be in a certain type of rhythm for the defib to do anything with it, for it to reorganise the electricity that's going on in their heart to enable the normal heartbeat again. If it can't do that, it will recognise that and it will say no shock advised, continue CPR. But it will keep checking to see if the situation has changed after every 2 minutes of CPR. If it says that they are going to benefit from a shock and it gives them a shock, I press the button. If the shock works and it puts their heart back into that normal rhythm again, they will show signs of life. They will start breathing for themselves. In that case, great. We can stop CPR, wonderful. I'll tell you what to do with that in a minute. If the shock doesn't work, however, it will tell me to go back to CPR for 2 minutes, and after those 2 minutes it will check again to see if they need another shock, and it will give them another shock. And if that doesn't work, back to CPR for 2 minutes. So it keeps following the same pattern. Analyse, shock if needed, back to CPR if the shock doesn't work. Analyse after 2 minutes of CPR, and so on and so on. So I'll turn it on and you'll hear what it says. So I'll hold it up so you can hear it and you can see the button flashing.
Analyzing heart rhythm. Do not touch the patient.
So we stop CPR, don't touch them while it analyses.
Shock advised.
So they do need a shock.
Charging. Stay clear of patient.
So don't touch them, stay clear, don't touch.
Deliver shock now. Press the orange button now.
So you can see that flashing, I press the button.
Shock delivered.
They will jump a bit once you've pressed.
Begin CPR.
just turn this off so you can hear me. So the shock didn't work, so it's told me to go back to CPR for 2 minutes. That bleeping is quite useful. That will keep going and it keeps me in time with my CPR, so that is great. So that will make me do CPR for 2 minutes. After that, it will stop me again. It will analyse what's going on and give them another shock if it thinks they need it, and so on and so on. So as you can see, there's nothing for me to actually make a decision about. I just do as I'm told. I follow the instructions and do as I'm told. I cannot go wrong with this. I can't hurt them. I can't make them any worse than they already are. If they're in cardiac arrest, essentially they are dead. I can't make them any worse than dead by using the defib. And I can't hurt myself. It's perfectly safe for everybody concerned. So let's just have a little talk about what could happen. If they do recover, if they do wake up and so show signs of life, it might not happen on the first shock. It could take several shocks for them to come round again. Leave them where they are, lying on their back, and leave the defib on. Don't switch it off. Don't pull the pads off, because they could go back into cardiac arrest again. So even though they've recovered, leave them lying on the floor with the pads in place and the defib on and ticking away, because it will monitor them. It will check that they're still okay. So don't switch it off. First aiders put these things on. We don't turn them off. The paramedics will switch it off and take these off when they arrive and probably put their own on in place of it. So leave it on until then. This can give hundreds of shocks. The battery in them will last a good couple of years, so don't worry about how many shocks it could give. Whereas I said the pads are thrown away. There should be a spare set of pads in the box for next time, and then whoever is responsible for this defib, somebody has to be responsible for it, depending on where it lives, where it's housed. They can then order a new spare set to be a spare while the spare ones are plugged in, if that makes sense. Safety wise, just make sure that you are not touching them while it's giving the shock. So make sure the person giving the CPR has taken their hands off their body. I always do a bit of a check from head to toe to make sure nobody's holding their hand or touching their leg. Just make sure everybody's not touching them and standing clear while the shock's given. Couple of other things to bear in mind. We've got water, because this is electricity, remember. So a little bit of rain is fine, a little bit of surface water on the ground, you don't need to worry about that. Don't worry if they're a bit damp or if the defib's got a bit of rain on it, it will be fine. Just consider though, if they are lying in a puddle of water, and please don't put the defib down in a puddle of water, you might want to drag them to somewhere slightly drier. The other thing to bear in mind is metal. I don't usually advocate removing metal jewellery simply because we haven't got time. It's a minor risk. It could give them a slight burn, but that's all. Getting this defib on and used is far more important. So don't waste time in undoing necklaces and things like that. Perhaps just check the necklace isn't tucked under the pad, or if they've got a nipple piercing, for example, just don't put the pad on top of it directly. If you have laid them on a foil blanket to insulate them from the floor, you've got to shift the foil blanket, and just watch out for things like metal furniture legs, table legs, chair legs, that their arms and legs aren't touching those. And if they're lying on a metal floor, perhaps a mezzanine floor that is bare metal, you would need to move them off that as well before you use the defibrillator. So I hope that's been of some use to you. Just to remind you that using a defibrillator massively increases somebody's chance of surviving this cardiac arrest. Every year in the UK, 30,000 people have a cardiac arrest out of hospital, so at home or at work or in a public place. And only 2,400 of those people live, which is 8%. Now, if we could increase that to a 12% survival rate by giving them early CPR and getting a defib on as soon as possible, that would increase them to 12% survival rates, and that would increase up to 1,200 lives a year being saved. So it's really important that we do use defibrillators. If you can get one on within 4 minutes, that's the magic time, 4 minutes, they've got a 50% chance of surviving this out of hospital cardiac arrest. After 4 minutes, the chances of surviving rapidly falls. For example, at 13 minutes after they went into cardiac arrest, they've only got a 1% chance of surviving. So you can see that getting this on as quickly as possible, preferably within those 4 minutes, is really, really important. So don't delay doing this. I hope that's been useful. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, so look for @Skylark First Aid. If you want information about courses, look at the website skylarkfirstaid.co.uk. Thank you for watching.